Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. A jury finds actor Jussie Smollett guilty of staging a hate crime against himself. We hear from the different sides and from a legal expert. A group of Washington lawmakers pushes back against a federal vaccine mandate for healthcare workers, and the CDC director says teens should get a booster after their vaccine. The Sackler name will soon be gone from a number of exhibition spaces at New York City's Met Museum. The family has been under heavy scrutiny for allegedly playing a role in the opioid crisis. Photographs showing Ghislaine Maxwell with late financier Jeffrey Epstein are shown in court at the British socialite's sex abuse trial. The photographs also include images of two young women. The Senate passed a bill last night targeting the national debt. It follows debate and predictions that the U.S. could soon reach its debt limit. By a final vote of 59 to 35, the bill establishes a fast-track process that will allow Democrats to raise the federal debt limit on their own. It comes just ahead of the December 15th government default deadline. Next, the bill goes to President Joe Biden's desk for his signature. With that, Senate Democrats would be able to increase the debt limit on their own with a simple majority of 51 votes. 14 Senate Republicans broke a filibuster to advance the debt limit process yesterday, breaking weeks of partisan deadlock on the issue. If gas and food prices seem particularly high these days, you're right. In fact, consumer prices in the U.S. have jumped to their highest levels in nearly 40 years. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that consumer price inflation rose by 6.8% in the year through November. That's without seasonal adjustments and a level not seen since June 1982. The report also says gas prices soared more than 58%, the biggest hike since 1980. And groceries cost 6.4% more over the same period, the largest increase since December 2008. Food prices at restaurants jumped nearly 6%, the highest jump since 1982. The big increases can be attributed to, in part, climbing housing costs, supply chain disruptions, and rising consumer demands due to the pandemic. President Biden responded to the new inflation report. He said price and cost increases have been slowing in the weeks since data was collected. Biden also said his Build Back Better plan, if it passes, can go a long way to fixing inflation. Former Empire actor Jussie Smollett has been found guilty of staging a hate crime against himself. Prosecutors say the hoax was the actor's bid to gain sympathy and to boost his career. NTD's Jessica Beatty reports.
Actor Jussie Smollett was convicted Thursday of staging a racist, homophobic attack on himself and later lying to police about it. Special Prosecutor Dan Webb spoke to reporters outside court.
That verdict was a resounding message by the jury that, in fact, Mr. Smollett did exactly what we said he did.
The verdict comes nearly 3 years after Smollett told police two white Trump supporters beat him up, yelled slurs at him, and put a noose around him. But two brothers testified that Smollett recruited them to fake the attack, something Smollett denies. The brothers' attorney says they regret their role in it.
My clients Ola and Bola Osundaro could not be more thrilled and pleased with the result today. We honor and respect the jury's outcome, but understand that there is a lot of healing that needs to happen.
Smollett was found guilty of 5 of the 6 charges of disorderly conduct, 1 count for each time he was accused of lying to police. His defense attorney says the verdict is inconsistent and they're going to appeal.
You cannot say Jussie is lying and Jussie is not lying for the same exact incidents. So we feel 100% confident that this case will be won on appeal.
But legal analyst Emily Baker says she doesn't think the verdict is inconsistent.
I think that because you have the counts being separated by different dates, that the jury could have reasonably found that on those first interactions with police, there was misleading, and then that last interaction with police either wasn't misleading or wasn't significantly misleading.
Smollett faces up to 3 years in prison for each conviction. But Baker says she doesn't think he'll get a large sentence because Smollett's charges were of the lowest class of felonies.
I think it's more likely he will do an amount of probation with some jail time, 90 days in that realm, unless the judge was really offended by his testimony and thought that he was lying to the court. And then, of course, it could be more.
The judge said he'll schedule sentencing sometime after late January. Smollett's also still facing a civil suit from the city of Chicago. The city seeking to recover more than $130,000 in police overtime, utilized to investigate Smollett's claim of a hate crime. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
Over 150 Republican Congress members are opposing Biden's vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. The administration says the mandate, which is currently on pause, is meant to protect the health and safety of patients and facilities, but lawmakers are questioning its potential effect on hospitals that are already short-staffed. Representative Jeff Duncan asserted that the vaccine mandate for medical personnel could cost more lives than it would save. That's because it would cause staffing shortages, he says. Duncan is joined by over 150 of his Republican colleagues in pushing back against the measure. Last month, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS, announced that any facility that receives federal funding must require their employees to get vaccinated or fire them. CMS stopped enforcement after 2 courts blocked the mandate, but CMS says it's confident they will prevail in court. The CDC director compared evolving science on COVID-19 to the weather. Dr. Walensky alluded to this concept in explaining why guidance over the virus changes with time.
So you can't say today you don't need an umbrella and think that that's going to be true for the next month, because you really do have to look at how the science changes, how the weather changes.
She said the science was different in May for the Alpha variant from what it was in July for Delta. Walensky also said Omicron variant cases are mild so far, and she says the health agency is looking into whether the disease is more severe in a vaccinated or boosted individual.
What we generally know is the more mutations a variant has, the higher level you need your immunity to be. And so since Omicron has a lot of them, we want to make sure we bolster everybody's immunity.
And as Christmas approaches, Dr. Walensky says it's important to make sure holiday gatherings are safe. She recommends people get tested for COVID before gathering. Amtrak says it will likely have to reduce its service next year, due in part to vaccine mandates. That's according to the president of the passenger rail service. Stephen Gardner testified before a House committee Thursday. He said Amtrak will not have enough employees to run all of its trains before the vaccine mandate takes effect January 4th. He noted many engineers, conductors, and workers either retired or left the company during the pandemic, and that Amtrak has halted hiring due to the uncertainty around pandemic restrictions. The company is expected to update its service routes soon. Now we look at an overview of how vaccine mandates, meant to keep workplaces safe, are affecting firefighters. Earlier this week, over 100 firefighters in Los Angeles were placed on unpaid leave for failing to comply, and now a judge has denied their union a request to delay the mandate. And a ruling is expected today on a lawsuit in Chicago that accuses the city of failing to give firefighters due process over the vaccine mandate. Earlier, I spoke with one of the plaintiffs, Fire Chief Scott Trugstad. He's been on non-disciplinary unpaid leave for the last roughly 50 days. He tells us more about why he chose not to comply despite a great personal cost.
There's a philosophic break here in that you have a government or even a private entity that believes that they can mandate that you take some type of medical treatment. We've been dealing with this COVID thing for the last close to 2 years now. Many of us have been sick with it, myself included. I treated it with the proper early treatment protocols and got through it pretty quickly. There were a lot of us that got sick. Some of us got really sick. I've got friends that are in the hospital right now. We had dealt with this thing the entire time. We used our PPE, we used our common sense, we used our ability to mitigate risk, which is what we do every day. And we're not accepting of the fact that our employer, the government, anybody can mandate a medical treatment.
Okay, so we'll see what happens. Earlier last month, hundreds of Chicago firefighters changed course and complied by reporting their vaccine status. You haven't. Why is that?
Well, it's funny because if you look at this this portal, the status, and how it relates to the larger picture, in that Congress is trying to get a national vaccine database going right now. We know that the state of Illinois uses the credit rating company Experian to run their vaccination portal. If you look at what they've got going in China with the Chinese Communist Party, and their social credit scores and the vaccine passports that they're trying to roll out all over the world. It doesn't take a scholar to realize that once you willfully submit your vaccination status, this is something that will probably wind up being used against you in the future. So that's where we've been on it. And the Illinois Labor Board actually ruled in favor of the Fraternal Order of Police, stating that the mandate and the vaccination portal did defy their conditions of employment.
Well, so in 2020, you were out attending to fires, saving people, getting COVID, recovering, but now it seems that you're going to lose your job over this vaccine mandate. What do you want to say to American people now that you've gone through all this?
I'd like to call on the American people to find their spirit and their soul again. I think for too long we've allowed ourselves to be steered by fear, and that's happened many, many times over the years. You know, the folks that want to psychologically manipulate others to their own gain, whatever those gains might be, are very good at manipulating people's emotions against them. I think that we're at a very dangerous point in our history. And if you look at the way, this isn't just Chicago, this isn't just the United States, it's around the world. You have governments and corporations working in lockstep and regulatory bodies working lockstep to pass mandates about personal health care.
Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot has said that she wants city workplaces to be as safe as possible, and a way to do that is through the vaccine. The FDA has expanded Pfizer's booster shots once again. Now 16 to 17-year-olds can line up to get boosted. The agency gave Pfizer third dose an emergency use authorization, so as of now, it's not fully approved, but available to this group if it's been 6 months since their last shot. FDA Commissioner Janet Woodcock said vaccines remain the most effective tool for fighting the virus. Others, such as the WHO, oppose boosters, saying countries should focus on initial vaccinations, and that initial doses still prevent severe disease, hospitalization, and death. At least 5 colleges and universities are putting COVID-19 booster mandates in place for students. The schools are rolling out requirements as extra protection against the pandemic on campus. The 5 colleges include the University of Notre Dame, Syracuse University, Northeastern University, Smith College, and University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Notre Dame students will be required to have a booster shot by mid-spring. Syracuse students will have to get the shot before the start of the spring semester. A tearful reunion at a California hospital. Those who recovered from COVID-19 are reuniting with their caregivers. The former patients are thanking the hospital workers for helping them through when they were hospitalized with the virus. Let's take a look.
Infected with the CCP virus, which causes COVID-19, Paul Manzone had to spend more than 2 months at Providence Mission Hospital in Mission Viejo, California. He was intubated twice in the ICU. On Thursday, he revisited the building to thank the doctors and nurses that cared for him.
You know, if it wasn't for you guys giving us both strength and hope, it would have been a lot more difficult, if not impossible. So I just want you both to know how much you care. Thank you.
Dr. Shorey Semeni, who treated Manzone, said Manzone was critically ill when he first came to the hospital, calling it a miracle he survived. After recovering, Manzone says he feels like he's changed and he appreciates life a lot more. And other virus survivor, 50-year-old Patrick DeBoer, was also hospitalized for months and intubated with severe pneumonia.
It's pretty emotional to kind of think about where I was, 2.5 months ago to where I am today. And, given the holidays, I have a lot to be thankful for. So
to be able to see somebody, especially somebody who is as ill as he is, now up and around, walking, being able to live his life is amazing. It really makes everything that we do, every sacrifice that we take, worth it.
Craig Whitaker was hospitalized with the virus for 7 days. He also went to the hospital to say thank you to his caregivers and his doctor.
It kind of makes you feel like all the hard work you did was worth it. Because we were, especially last winter, we were working 7 days a week, every single day, coming in, taking care of all the patients. So it's very gratifying to see people come back and see how healthy they are, because that wasn't always the case.
The doctor notes there were some people who didn't make it, so he says he's very happy to see Whitaker out of the hospital and doing well.
Airline fees for baggage and schedule changes have gone up quite a bit in the past few years. Now, lawmakers are pushing a bill to regulate airline fees to make sure they don't grow too much. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more.
U.S. airlines are collecting 5 times as much revenue from fees compared to a decade ago. In 2019, they raked in nearly $110 billion. That's up from $22 billion in 2010.
That's right. Before 2008, checking a bag was free. Remember those days? Now, $35 for the first bag and $45 for the second bag.
With hopes of putting an end to these rising fees, Democrat members in the House and in the Senate are introducing the Fair Fees Act. It would prohibit airlines from charging what they call unreasonably high fees for basic services like bags and schedule changes.
How do they get away with it? They can because they have near monopolistic power over the routes that they run.
The congressmen say to solve this, more government regulation and oversight is needed. And one part of these regulations that they're proposing would be to make sure that the fees are proportionate to the services being provided. We asked how would they determine the baseline, the maximum amount that these fees can be, and they said this would be at the discretion of the Department of Transportation.
We're going to give to the Department of Transportation the power to be able to determine what is reasonable. Right now, everyone in our country knows it's unreasonable.
But how likely is it that the Fair Fees Act would pass and be signed by President Biden? Markey tells us the last time he introduced the bill, there was a Republican co-sponsor, Senator Roger Wicker. But this time, they have not yet secured any Republican sponsors so far. Markey tells us it's a bipartisan issue, so he's confident it will gain more support. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Drug overdoses in San Francisco, California have become an epidemic. The number of overdose deaths nearly tripled that of COVID deaths last year. NTD's Eileen Ng hears more from a San Francisco native.
San Francisco has a much bigger problem than COVID.
Bad is an understatement. I would say it is horrific. It is negligent. It is an epidemic in and of itself. And it was not always this way.
Jenny Shao, a San Francisco native, says drug overdoses have gotten much worse within the last 5 years.
Before, you were able to walk through the streets regardless of what neighborhood you were in. And you did not have to try and tiptoe over bodies, not knowing whether they were dead or alive. And also, you did not have to hopscotch through anything like drug paraphernalia, including needles, and you were not literally walking through a scene of, say, the Night of the Living Dead.
The city's data reveals there were 713 overdose deaths compared to 261 COVID-19 deaths in 2020. In July, San Francisco Mayor London Breed announced the city will invest $13.2 million to prevent drug overdose. Recently, city officials are pushing for safe injection sites as part of their overdose prevention program, which could start as soon as next spring. But according to Shao, that's like putting a Band-Aid on the problem and fast-tracking a way to self-destruction.
The idea is sobriety, and that's the golden key. You do not want to be dependent on these drugs. And from what I understand of these harm reduction sites, as the city likes to call them, is that you are putting yourself at less risk of, say, overdose or harm. But nevertheless, you are still locked in that state of constantly abusing yourself and, so to speak, teetering on the border of death.
Shao says the city needs to invest in more mental health programs. Eileen Ng, NTD News, California.
The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City is removing the Sackler family's name from exhibition spaces. That's amid growing outrage over the family's alleged role in the opioid epidemic. Here are the details.
The museum, commonly known as the Met, jointly announced with the Sackler family that the family's name would be removed from 7 exhibition spaces. One of those spaces is the Sackler Wing, which houses the iconic Temple of Dender.
People in the art world are very aware of the Sackler funding of museums and things like that. And so it wasn't a total surprise that that the museum decided finally to remove their name from the wall.
The Sacklers are some of the world's biggest benefactors. A number of top museums in the world bear their names. The family said in a statement, "Our families have always strongly supported the Met, and we believe this to be in the best interest of the museum and the important mission that it serves."
A lot of museums have been reticent to completely take the name off the wall. A lot of museums, not only in the US, but also in Europe, specifically in the UK and Paris, have said they would stop taking gifts from the Sacklers, but they didn't say that they would take their name off the wall. And there have been a couple of museums that have sort of done it, but few have done it as definitively as the Met has done it.
The Sacklers owned the now bankrupt drug company Purdue Pharma. The family and the company face over 3,000 lawsuits for allegedly contributing to the opioid crisis, which has claimed the lives of about 500,000 people since 1999. Art museum expert Alex Greenberger says what the museum has done could mark a turning point where museums start vetting patronage more.
I do think that the Sackler, the protests surrounding the Sackler stuff by Payne and other groups were related to a larger reckoning that has only happened within the past few years or so, let's say, generally about what kinds of patronage museums are willing to accept, whether they know what their patrons do and whether they even care.
The Met had already stopped taking donations from the Sacklers in 2019, but 2 exhibition spaces will continue to bear the Sackler name, one gallery in the Asian wing and one gallery in the modern and contemporary wing.
A former Drug Enforcement Administration agent was sentenced to more than 12 years in federal prison. He conspired to launder money with a Colombian drug trafficking organization. 46-year-old Jose Irizarry broke down in tears as he addressed the court at the sentencing. He said the biggest punishment was not being able to explain to his 2 young daughters why he would be going away for so long. He expressed regret for his actions. Irizarry and his wife pleaded guilty in September 2020 to participating in a 7-year scheme. They used Irizarry's position as a special agent to divert over $9 million from undercover money laundering investigations to himself and his co-conspirators. The court ordered Irizarry to pay over $11,000 in restitution and forfeit his interests in a diamond ring and luxury sports car purchased with bribe and kickback money. The judge ordered him to begin serving his sentence immediately. His wife had already been sentenced to 60 months of probation in late 2020. At least 54 people are dead after a horrific accident in southern Mexico where a truck carrying migrants flipped over. Authorities say more than 100 people were crammed into the vehicle on Thursday when it crashed on a sharp curve. Video footage shows the trailer on its side on a highway with injured people splayed out on tarps on the ground. A woman held a child wailing in her lap. Both were covered in blood. Several dozen people were injured and taken to hospitals in Chiapas, which borders Guatemala. This is one of the worst accidents to befall migrants, risking their lives to reach the United States. Many pay smugglers, who illegally transport them in crowded and dangerous trucks on the long journey. A terrifying incident at a Las Vegas airport this week. Police say a man drove a limo through fences at the McCarran International Airport, hoping to steal a jet and fly to Area 51. The man told police that he wanted to see aliens. Area 51 is located in Nevada. The classified facility is used as a training range for the U.S. Air Force, but pop culture and rumors have led some to believe the government hides aliens and UFOs there. According to police, the man nearly crashed into several planes, disrupted air traffic, and made bomb threats. They say they found a product that looked similar to an explosive device when they searched his car. The suspect was arrested for trespassing, dispersing a hoax substance, and threatening terrorist-like acts. CNN reports that the law firm the man claims represents him denies working with him. 21 new charges have been filed against former South Carolina attorney Alex Merdaugh. That brings the total number of charges from a state grand jury investigation to 48. Charges include money laundering, computer crimes, and forgery. They stem from a scheme to defraud victims and include a multi-million-dollar sum in a wrongful death settlement involving the family of the Merdaugh family's housekeeper. A bond hearing for Merdaugh was scheduled for today, but was delayed following the additional charges to give attorneys extra time. A new bond hearing is expected next week. Merdaugh is also facing charges for trying to stage his own shooting death to leave his son a $10 million life insurance payout. He's being held without bond at a jail in Columbia on Beaufort County charges. The trial of Ghislaine Maxwell resumed in New York. The trial was abruptly adjourned after an attorney on the case got sick. The illness was not COVID-related. The judge told jurors that everyone is now doing well and attorneys are present. The force accuser from the indictment against Maxwell is now testifying. Annie Farmer is the only victim using her real name. Previously, a trove of photographs showing Maxwell with late financier Jeffrey Epstein have been shown in court. The judge denied a request by Maxwell's attorney on Monday to bar the photos. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
FBI agents found the photos on compact discs seized from Epstein's Manhattan home during a July 2019 search. Epstein was arrested on sex abuse charges that month and died by suicide in jail weeks later. The cache of digital photographs also includes images of two women who have accused Maxwell of recruiting them for Epstein while they were teenagers. They are depicted in various states of undress, prosecutors indicated on Monday. Maxwell, 59, faces 8 counts of sex trafficking and other charges for allegedly recruiting and grooming teenage girls for Epstein to abuse between 1994 and 2004. She has pleaded not guilty. Her lawyers argue she is being scapegoated for Epstein's alleged crimes because he is dead. U.S. District Judge Allison Nathan ruled that the photographs were relevant because they showed the relationship between Maxwell and Epstein, who were a couple during the 1990s. Nathan admitted a photo of an accuser whose case is not included in the indictment as evidence. She said she would consider whether to admit another that depicts a woman who testified earlier on Monday under the pseudonym Kate. In her testimony, Kate said Maxwell introduced her to Epstein in London when she was 17. Nathan has instructed the jury that those were not illegal sex acts because Kate was above the age of consent in Britain. Maxwell's defense attorney, Laura Menninger, said some of the photographs could have been altered. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
New York City is just one step away from giving non-citizens the right to vote in local elections. The City Council passed the bill. Now, the mayor's got to make a choice. NTD's Miguel Moreno reports from Manhattan.
New York City prides itself as a sanctuary city for immigrants. Now off to the mayor's desk is a bill that the city's talked about for years, a bill that would give non-citizens the right to vote in local elections. Mayor Bill de Blasio, a self-described progressive, has his reservations.
Ari, right now, I still have very mixed feelings about it. I've been honest about that. That hasn't changed a bit. I think there are still some outstanding legal questions about the city's authority versus the state's in this matter. But I respect the city council.
According to several reports, de Blasio has confirmed that he won't veto the bill. The mayor, city council members, and other city officials may soon have hundreds of thousands of additional voters to win over. Democratic City Council member Idanis Rodriguez, architect of the bill, says 800,000 additional residents would be able to cast ballots. Only lawful permanent residents like green card holders and residents authorized to work would be able to vote if the mayor signs this bill into law. So proponents say these immigrants work and pay taxes but aren't allowed to vote, which in their view isn't right. But opponents say this bill devalues the voting rights citizens have by endowing non-citizens with that same right. Opponents also accuse Democrats of trying to expand their voter base by passing this bill. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
Former NFL wide receiver Demaryius Thomas has died at the age of 33. He earned 5 straight Pro Bowl appearances and a Super Bowl ring during a prolific career spent mostly with the Denver Broncos. Thomas was found dead in his suburban Atlanta home Thursday night. Police say their preliminary investigation shows his death is from a medical issue. Thomas last played in the NFL in 2019. He officially announced his retirement this past June. The Broncos took him with the number 22 overall pick in the 2010 NFL Draft. He teamed up with legendary quarterback Peyton Manning. Thomas helped the Broncos win the 2015 Super Bowl in Manning's final year. He twice had more than 100 catches in a season and had 5 straight seasons with more than 1,000 yards receiving. Fox News held another Christmas tree lighting ceremony, this time for its recently replaced Christmas tree after the first one was burned down. It invited members of New York City's police and fire departments. The first Christmas tree was destroyed about 24 hours earlier in what is believed to be an arson attack. Fox News hosts thanks police and firefighters who responded to the blaze. A suspect was arrested but quickly released because of New York City's no bail policy. The 49-year-old homeless man told reporters he didn't do it. He faces misdemeanor charges that included criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, and criminal trespass. The tree is located outside of Fox News headquarters in New York City. Security for the news network say they saw the alleged arsonist climbing the tree after midnight. Investigators say the fire was set with a burning piece of cardboard. Coming up, transportation and supply chain problems hurt farmers across the U.S. West Coast, a major global supplier of specialty crops like walnuts. The man who claims to have invented Bitcoin wins a lawsuit against the estate of a former partner, but it's not the end of his legal troubles. All that and more here on NTD News.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, the CEO of MyPillow. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but millions of you out there. My employees and I want to personally thank each and every one of you for all of your support. At MyPillow, we not only have pillows, but we have hundreds of products, including my new slippers, bathrobes, sleepwear, and my new beds. We're offering the best gifts ever for the best prices ever. For example, we have this exclusive offer on the standard size MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now only $19.98 with your promo code. We also have the queen size MyPillows, regularly $79.98, now only $24.98 with your promo code. And we have the king size, regularly $89.98, now only $29.98 with your promo code. So go to mypillow.com now and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below to receive this exclusive offer.
California Bay Area police officers held a memorial on Wednesday for a security guard who was killed late last month. The security guard is remembered as a kind and selfless friend by many. We hear more from NTD's Cynthia Kai.
Members of the public and police officers from across the Bay Area gathered in San Jose, California for a memorial to honor Kevin Nishida, who lost his life protecting a news crew in Oakland. Nishida was a security guard for San Francisco's KRON 4 News. Police officers came out to share fond memories, pay their respects, and bid farewell to the late security guard. San Jose Police Chief Mata remembers Nishida as having a huge heart and always seeing the good in others.
Kevin was very active and full of energy. So much so that he was nicknamed the Energizer Bunny by all his friends.
Colma City Police Commander Lum says Nishida was a hard-working officer and always full of energy.
I thank God he allowed us to cross paths. Like a majority of our police departments, I know heaven is short-staffed and in need of more guardian angels. God always seems to pick the best.
Nishida was hit by a bullet while protecting a KRON 4 news crew in Oakland on November 24th. He was taken to the hospital where he passed away 3 days later. He is survived by his wife, 2 children, and 3 grandchildren.
I'd just like to say that, he did something that he cared about, something that meant a lot to him. Obviously, family meant a lot to him, community meant a lot to him, and serving meant a lot to him. And I think that's what we should be focusing on today.
Nishida began his law enforcement career in 1993. He served as an officer for the Oakland Housing Authority, San Jose, Hayward, and Colma police departments. He served as a Cronford security guard after retiring from law enforcement. Oakland police are offering a $38,500 reward for any information leading to arrests in the shooting. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
A victory for Craig Wright, the man who claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin. While that claim is still in dispute, he did score a legal victory this week in a Florida court. Wright was fighting a claim that the estate of his former business partner deserved half of a cryptocurrency fortune worth about $54 billion.
The computer scientist said he felt completely vindicated in a video statement released to the press.
So just hearing there's going to be a verdict which could be against me, so the roller coaster started going down, and then it started to be read, and I heard no partnership, which was, the first bit was great. Relieved. Incredibly relieved. I mean, it's been a long time here and I'm looking forward to going home.
But it wasn't a total victory. While jurors found that Wright was not liable for fraud, they did award $100 million in intellectual property rights to W&K Information Defense Research, a joint venture between the 2 men. Wright says he's glad the case is over and now he can go back to doing what he originally wanted to do with the creation of Bitcoin.
I invented Bitcoin not to make another money laundering, drug sale type system. I did it to be different. I did it to have micropayments and basically a low-cost digital cash system, which was the thing that was always the holy grail of the industry. So I'm going to bring back the idea of digital cash, not cryptocurrency, digital cash. I'm going to allow people to send fractions of a cent. And by that, I mean, once we get it scaled properly, 1,000th of a cent will be a valid transaction that people can send. The whole point here is to actually allow people to have control of their own money.
Wright, however, has one more Bitcoin brawl on his hands. In May, he sued software developers over 111,000 Bitcoins that he claims he owns. At Thursday's value, that cash is worth about $5.3 billion.
Last August, a Portland, Oregon resident made a startling discovery. Tesla drivers can play a video game on their car's touchscreen dashboard while the vehicle is moving. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Curious to see for himself, Vince Patton drove his own 2021 Tesla Model 3 to an empty community college parking lot and activated a game called Skyforce Reloaded from a menu and did a few loops.
So this is the warning you get when you put the car in drive. Use of Tesla Arcade while the vehicle is in motion is only for passengers. Please check local laws prior to playing. So you must say I'm a passenger, and I am only lying because I'm in a closed parking lot. I would never do this on the street.
Patton tried Solitaire too, and was able to activate that game while driving. Later, he found he could browse the internet while his car was moving. Patton loves his car and says he has nothing against Tesla, but he worries that drivers will play games and become dangerously distracted. Early last month, Patton decided to file a complaint with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA.
There's really no way to reach out to them. So I filed a complaint with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I admire Tesla. I think it's very important not to pollute the planet. It's a very good car, but this feature does not belong in this car. It is dangerous.
The NHTSA's inquiry marks the latest in a growing list of possible safety issues involving advanced auto technology. The government is looking into Tesla's autopilot partially automated driving system, as well as its full self-driving software system. In its statement, the NHTSA said that it continues to research driving distractions, and that it's issued voluntary guidelines for automakers to determine whether a particular task interferes with driver attention. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Transportation and supply chain problems are hurting farmers across the U.S. West Coast, a major global supplier of specialty crops like fruits and nuts that are popular at end-of-year celebrations.
These shrink-wrapped boxes of fresh California walnuts are stacked up almost to the ceiling in Don Barton's California packing facility. They should be heading to Europe for holiday baking and to Asia for New Year's celebrations.
Walnuts are considered a culinary nut primarily, not as opposed to being a snacking nut. And so, yeah, the peak demand comes around the Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year holidays.
Instead, about $10 million worth of nuts are stuck at his processing plant 70 miles south of Sacramento, thousands of miles from their destinations, as the global supply chain crisis squeezes ports. Ships that would normally pick up these walnuts are skipping the port of Oakland, or showing up at odd or unexpected times that make it difficult to get the product to the docks.
California is not the largest producer in the world. In the case of walnuts, we produce about 30% of the world's supply. So we have foreign competition in China, we have competition from Chile, we have competition from Eastern European countries.
Much of the shipping crunch is due to the pandemic. The demand for imports overwhelmed supply chains and prompted container shipping lines to focus on the most profitable routes between China and the Port of Los Angeles, skipping others.
What we're seeing is that because of the congestion that's been happening at ports, in particular in Southern California, that has delayed vessels and they're off schedule. As a result, ocean carriers are deciding, rather than coming up the coast to Oakland, California, to skip us.
California's walnut industry exported 47% fewer nuts in the shell and 16% fewer shelled nuts during September and October of 2021 than it did in the previous year, according to a California Walnut Board report. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Democratic Senator Ed Markey tells NTD the U.S. has a responsibility not just as the economic and military leader, but as the moral leader of the world to shine a spotlight on human rights violations. This comes amid a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics and President Biden's Democracy Summit. NTD's Allison Lee has the details.
The White House on Monday announced a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics, meaning the U.S. won't send officials to the Games next February. Senator Ed Markey tells NTD a diplomatic boycott can draw international attention to human rights abuses in China.
And that's in large part because of what is being inflicted upon the Uyghurs. It's a statement about American human rights and how important it is for us to have our voice be heard and to shine a spotlight on what the Chinese are doing through our diplomatic boycott. The whole world then pays more attention to what is happening to these oppressed people.
Reports show that the Chinese Communist regime has arbitrarily detained over 1 million Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang region. Detainees say they experience forced labor, forced sterilization, and systematic abuse. A number of clothing brands this year have cut cotton supply from Xinjiang over concerns of forced labor. The senator explains what he thinks the U.S. can do.
It would be to really ensure that there is accountability, that we're taking note of the exploitation of Uyghur workers, and that we're not going to be willing conspirators in this effort to in any way oppress the Uyghurs. And we're just going to separate ourselves from anything that the Chinese are doing in terms of the products which are created. We don't need them being sold, and we won't allow them to be sold to American consumers.
The senator says it's important for the U.S. to shine a spotlight on every human rights violation, whether it be religious persecution, forced labor, or forced organ harvesting, all of which are taking place in communist China. Allison Lee, NTD News.
The United Nations Human Rights Office is finalizing its report on the situation in China's Xinjiang region. It looks at allegations of unlawful detention, mistreatment, and forced labor.
We have, of course, similarly identified patterns of arbitrary detention and ill treatment in institutions, coercive labor practices, and an erosion of social and cultural rights in general. And we reiterate the need for an independent and comprehensive assessment of the human rights situation in Xinjiang.
The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights says it hopes to publish its report in the coming weeks. It also says there was no progress in talks with Chinese officials regarding the High Commissioner's request to visit the region. This is after an earlier report from the London-based Uyghur Tribunal. That investigation says the Chinese regime is guilty of genocide against Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in Xinjiang. The report also concludes that Chinese leader Xi Jinping bears primary responsibility. Colville says those findings are deeply disturbing and are still being analyzed. There was no immediate reaction from the Chinese Communist regime. Just ahead, we take a look at Kazakhstan's bird hunting tradition, but the birds are the hunters, not the hunted. And the Netherlands National Museum plans to restretch Rembrandt's iconic painting, The Night Watch, to rid the work of deformations likely caused by climate conditions in the gallery. Stay tuned to find out more.
The worst genocide in human history also destroyed the lives of thousands of Jewish survivors still suffering today.
God calls on people who believe in Him to act on His word. Comfort my people.
Especially during this holiday season of Hanukkah.
When I come here and I sit with Lily, I realize what she needs right now is food.
These elderly Jews are weak and they're sick. They're living on $2 a day. This now is how God's children are living. Take this time to send a survival food box to these forgotten Jews.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews urgently need your gift of $25 now to help provide one survival food box with all of the essentials they critically need for their diet for 1 month. Your special holiday gift will provide everything they need to celebrate the miracle of Hanukkah.
This is the first time in over 70 years that she has anything to do with faith.
The communists came and wiped it out. And now we're coming to her and we're saying, it's okay to have faith. It's okay to light the Hanukkah candles.
For just $25, you can help supply the essential foods they desperately need for 1 month.
For over 35 years, this trusted ministry has given Christians like me a way to tangibly bless Jewish people who are in need throughout the world.
God tells us to take care of them, to feed the hungry. And I pray Holocaust survivors will be given the basic needs that they so desperately pray for to survive.
The HMS Queen Elizabeth returned home to Portsmouth, England today. This completes the first deployment of the British flagship aircraft carrier. The ship is the largest and most powerful vessel ever constructed for the British Navy.
For 7.5 months, we've deployed the largest, most complex maritime strike group the Royal Navy's ever operated to the far side of the world and back. We've exercised and participated with over 40 different nations.
The United Kingdom's Royal Navy hails the operation as the most significant peacetime deployment in 25 years. The HMS Queen Elizabeth led the Royal Navy's Carrier Strike Group 21, a force containing 9 ships, a submarine, and 5 air squadrons. Over 3,000 Marines, sailors, and aviators from the UK, the United States, and the Netherlands took part in the voyage. The carrier group covered 500,000 nautical miles during its mission to the Indo-Pacific region. The U.S. Brigadier General Simon Doran says the operation was of great significance to the Western world. Kazakhstan is a country just south of Russia, and while its snow-covered landscape is far from the West, just like in Africa, the eagle is a national symbol. NTD's Arian Pastar has more on the country's bird hunting tradition.
Over 80 birds gathered at an annual contest near a small village. But don't get it mixed up. The birds are the hunters, not the hunted. At the competition, both people and birds showed off their fox and rabbit hunting skills.
It is more like an art than hunting. You can get much more game with a gun. And a golden eagle, you have to train it all the time, take care of it, and look for good hunting places.
And the eagles do snag a good number of catches.
With this golden eagle, we caught 8 foxes last year. No, 9 foxes. She caught 8 herself, and the other one, how did it happen? My brother let his eagle fly, but I did not see it. And when I saw a fox and let my golden eagle fly, both birds caught the same fox.
As part of the discipline, owners called their golden eagles back to land on their arms, demonstrating mastership and trust. The event was held by a non-governmental foundation which aims to preserve the ancient tradition of bird hunting. The foundation's executing director says that nowadays young people aren't very interested in learning how to train hunting birds or take care of them. But she added that the art is still being passed from generation to generation with hunters' families.
It is our ancestors' tradition. They, hunters, keep this art alive. I do not know who else does. Young people do it for fun sometimes, but stop fast. Those who have been hunting for 10 or 20 years, their ancestors practice this art. Children and grandchildren now keep it on.
Another bird hunter explained that, to him, the local tradition means holding on to his people's identity. He called it a life instinct.
A letter written by the author Charles Dickens to a prominent acquaintance is going to auction next week. In the letter, Dickens writes about a dinner held in his honor that a good friend had been persuaded not to go to, much to his dismay. NTD's Neil Woodrow has the story.
A letter by Charles Dickens dated the 6th of December 1858 is set to go up for auction at Christie's in London.
This is a really splendid letter because it brings together Charles Dickens and one of the other great Victorian men of the age, Sir Joseph Paxton. Paxton is the man who built the Crystal Palace, most famously, but he was also a gardener, he was a local MP, he was an architect, he did so many different things.
Christie's expert says this letter is a cut above other Dickens letters.
And it brings them together around the theme of Christmas, which is, of course, nice, especially because of the Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens' most famous work.
Around this time, 163 years ago, Charles Dickens was in Coventry to give a reading of the Christmas Carol for a local charity. But his friend Paxton had been disinvited from the dinner that Dickens was attending.
And so he's writing in rather kind of colourful terms to express his frustration about why things have gone wrong, and paints rather a colourful picture of the local businessman who seems to have made a mess of the whole thing, a man called Whitton, who he calls blunder-headed Whitton.
In the letter, Dickens recounts his evening at the dinner and gives a frank assessment of the organiser Whitton.
If he could only find a hole big enough to put his foot in, he would unquestionably do it.
Christie's expects the 4-page handwritten note to fetch between £4,000 and £6,000.
It gives a flavour of Christmas, it gives a flavour of Dickens as in his public persona, and it gives that kind of flash of writing ability that you really want from Dickens, the kind of colour and enjoyment of a strange local incident.
It goes under the hammer in the valuable books and manuscripts sale at the auction house on December 15th. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
The Netherlands National Museum is planning to restretch Rembrandt's iconic painting, The Night Watch, to rid the work of deformations. The artwork will be removed from its wooden stretcher next month. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
Conservators at the Rijksmuseum will attempt to reduce the deformations of The Night Watch by Rembrandt. The canvas will be removed from its wooden stretcher next month and placed on a new one to remove them.
We strongly feel that the wooden stretcher is contributing to the problem because a wooden stretcher actually reacts differently to the canvas. It will then be put onto a new strainer, a non-reactive material.
The oil on canvas painting depicts an Amsterdam civil militia and shows off Rembrandt's renowned use of light and composition to create a dynamic scene filled with characters.
In the macro XRF iron map here on the right, the feathers are clearly visible, while on the painting they are not visible. Well, it gives us the feeling we can peek over Rembrandt's shoulder while he was working on the Night Watch.
Once the painting has been restretched, the museum will decide on whether further restoration work is needed. The announcement came after intense scrutiny of the painting, using high-tech imaging technology, including scans that revealed a preparatory sketch of the work underneath the paint.
Most important was the discovery of a type of arsenic-containing pigment that is not commonly associated with Rembrandt's palette. He used it in the impasto ridge area of the embroidery of van Ruitenburg's buff coat and his sleeves.
The museum said the ripples were likely caused by climate conditions in the gallery, where it hung during the rebuilding work on its landmark home in Amsterdam. The painting has undergone many restorations over its lifetime. The museum said that much of the painting remains in excellent condition, while some areas need work. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
4 adorable mountain lion cubs found under a picnic table near a Thousand Oaks, California office building. The National Park Service says its biologists assisted the California Department of Fish and Wildlife with the cubs. All 4 were female and appeared to be roughly 6 weeks old. They were thin, but in stable condition. National Park Service biologists fitted them with tracking collars and collected biological samples. They waited to see if their mother would return. When she did not, they took the cubs to a local veterinarian. Sadly, 2 of them died. The other 2 cubs were taken to a veterinary hospital for treatment. They will be housed at the Orange County Zoo for now until a permanent home can be found. Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.